Hello and welcome to another episode of this season of Try This on Wisp Sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kirstin Lauritzen, and today I'm so excited about this guest because I've been a fan of hers for a while. Tenille Hoogland is the founder and head coach of Elements Sports Coaching. She is committed to empowering athletes in perimenopause and beyond to fulfill their athletic goals, which is why I'm so excited because we haven't had anybody on the podcast who has been an expert in perimenopause and beyond. So this is going to be such a packed episode and I can't wait. She does this through individualized coaching and by bringing experts in mindset, nutrition, training, and recovery. I mean, like, we're the same person together to discuss how we as athletes in perimenopause and beyond can thrive in sport. Tenille has done a lot. She led Age Group Team Canada to International Triathlon Union World Championship events. She organized Ironman events and was senior planner for the 2010 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games Federal Secretariat, which is really cool. She competed as an athlete, professional and sponsored triathlete from 2007 to 2013, earning titles in both short distance and long distance triathlon, 2x 70.3 Ironman champion. That's so cool. Now Tenille is keeping fit and strong by teaching spin sessions online with her athletes, joining the Element race team at every chance on the start line, and by chasing her 2 young sons on bike and foot. Tenille, welcome to the show.
It is so fun listening to your bio. It's like, man, that's me. Wow.
I know. Busy. It has been busy. You've been up to a lot. So today, what we're going to talk about is perimenopause and beyond. I've got tons and tons of questions. Can you give us a little background into the topic and why this is a particular focus and passion for you?
Yeah. Why perimenopause and beyond? You know, it all stemmed from me being an athlete and struggling so much. And here I was, I've been an athlete and at the elite level, you could say for the majority part of my life, younger life, I was a synchronized swimmer. And then I then took a huge pause as I went through university. And then I decided at the ripe old age of 27 that I wanted to still go to the Olympics and why not give it a best shot? So I literally, at this time, I was working for the federal government and in the Olympic, being the senior planner. And this passion I just started whittling down my hours until there were 10 hours left. And then I was like, well, the games are ready. Let's go. And I'm going to take off and start training full time. And that is where I started my biggest life, learning of how to be athlete.
Yeah.
And all the things of what not to do, really. Yeah. And so here we are, you know, I'm approaching my 30s and everything is different. Mm-hmm. And yet we are coached. We're so often coached, and thank goodness it's really changing now with phenomenal amount of information available, but we were coached like we were all teenagers. And fast forward through, you know, labral tears in both hips, really, you know, disordered eating, through a lot of injury, just lack of just my fire. I lost my fire. Like, it was really sad. And yet I was so gripped by push harder, keep going, want more, perform at your best, be tough enough. Those girls are doing it. So can you. Just everything around me was just push through. And when I finally, broke, just at the end of the day, I was just crossing lines. But I was not crossing lines with the fire that burnt within me at the beginning. And I've got a lot of fire. So it was like, what happened? And this led me into a real discovery. I, finished education at Simon & Fraser University for nutrition. And I started delving in deeper and had various other experiences. And then finally I was just like, we have to start training different. Yeah, we're different. And so, Dr. Stacy Sims, of course, is really important to this journey. Yep. And just finally seeing, that's it. Physiology is different. We're not small men. And this I'm at early stages of perimenopause. I want to get this right. So I became starting at the age of 35, a lot of what we don't know is that we need to get on this early. We need to start by ideally all your life, but by age of 35, some females can enter into perimenopause as early as that. So I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to support athletes as best as I'm able with the whole athlete approach, and obviously with mindset, nutrition, training, and recovery, because that's what I know we have to do.
Yes, we absolutely do. Have you taken, I know you mentioned you've taken Dr. Stacey Sims' Women Are Not Small Men course. Have you taken her perimenopause course as well? I was just curious.
No, I have not taken that course. I've launched myself into a number of other directions that are starting to really tie in, and I
love it.
I research. And the other course that I just want to put a shout out for its phenomenal delivery was the Girls Gone Strong.
Yeah. Okay.
Curriculum.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And because it was so thorough and well done, like the team of Molly Galbraith and that whole organization was phenomenal. So for any coaches that are out there that really want to understand just from the foundation and up, it was phenomenal. So I had taken both of those and then my own research and just launched from there. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you shared that, just because there's so many resources that are out there, and it's important, I think, for us to share where we get some of those things as well, just to point people in the right direction. There's so many coaches, including my coach, who does a great job at trying to learn more and figure out how he can best support a lot of his female athletes in many different life stages. And so it's pretty awesome to be able to share a lot of information and where people can go and learn more. But let's keep it to this. So, women have, so just as you mentioned, there's so many different life stages that women go through. I mean, we've got to figure out how our bodies are shifting and changing in puberty. And then we kind of get into that really deep into the reproductive phase. How do our bodies change through pregnancy? If we go that route, there's so many different things we kind of have to relearn how our body's functioning. What are some of the things that change starting at 35, and then kind of working the way up? I know this is kind of a hefty question, but what are some of the things that shift and change that women are kind of now having to refigure out? And what, in your experience, seems to be some of the things that catch women up maybe the most?
Yeah. What a great question. So I won't go into the whole of what we need to know about perimenopause is that we start to get off our cycle. And by that, what I mean is that the cycle, the experience of your menstrual cycle we're talking about here, if you have, between 25 and 31, whatever your normal is for your menstrual cycle, it can start to shift. The biggest thing that I believe that people really want to take on through this period is that there is no normal. Your normal is the only thing that's normal.
Yes.
That there is not one way to go through perimenopause. And everybody's experience as estrogen declines on a whole, and as and as progesterone changes, it is entirely unique to you. What that means is that there is no perfect plan of training plan, as I'm speaking specifically to.
Yeah.
That we can go to say, okay, we're going to do, now that we're going into perimenopause, we're going to do a 2-week quality, cycle with intensity. Then we're going to go into 1 week endurance and then 1 week recovery. Pre-menopause, while we're having a regular cycle, that may work. May not either. It totally depends on the individual. But in perimenopause, you got to throw away the book of what's going to work. And you have to come into a really different reality of, all right, I have an opportunity here to really come into my own and to figure out how do I support my body. And if there's one thing to take away from this whole talk, it's that I am going through this experience. This can be really long. It can, for some people, they just can coast through. Other people, it's like, there's no coasting. It is a rocky, like really crazy experience of different symptoms that you're trying to always stay on top of, and you're not always sure exactly how to stay on top of them. And, you know, estrogen flies up and then comes crashing down. And it's like, oh, there's, you know, hot flashes of what's going on. Yeah. and it shifts. And then all of a sudden, you know, mood changes and all these different elements of being what you knew has to shift. So what you know has to be reevaluated.
Yeah.
And the way that you worked before, and I think this ties into how I was athlete before. It served me. I did so well as an athlete, and yet it didn't serve me. And everything that did not work before, really, like, so if my push through, my grit, my just one more rep, let's, you know, always go to the end. Let's, you know, there was nothing that I wanted to constantly prove. Those things, that methodology that one uses to find performance, let's say, is really going to crack when you go through perimenopause. Okay. It's that methodology that you relied on for success. Yeah. If it wasn't working back then, it's really not going to work now. Okay. And so everything becomes amplified. So it's this perfect opportunity to discombobulate all your molecules and say, okay, now how do I come into my own truth? How do I come into what's good for me? How do I start shedding any of the stories that I had about what's the perfect training plan? What's the perfect way to eat? What's the perfect, you know, the ideal situation into, okay, what's the ideal for me? Yeah. And that's where, that's perimenopause. Okay. The beyond is something different. Yeah. The beyond is things are leveling out. And yet we still have to come into a whole new realm of thinking about, well, what's important to me? Where do I want my energy? How do I want to get on that start line? Is it a start line? Is it health? Is it longevity? What do I need to do for longevity? And so while we can come back to a more of a rhythm, because it's not as our hormones aren't fluctuating as much, we've come down from the hormonal roller coaster. Roller coaster is a good word. I was like, cycle. Right. Yeah. So we've come off of that, but now we have to redefine again what we want. Right. And what does that look like? And what are we going to give ourselves permission to be? And one of the greatest gifts that I have is that when I do the interviews with experts is I get to I seek out these phenomenal females that are living, breathing, eating, 60 plus and doing phenomenal things and having and finding their voice and showing what's possible. And that excites me because I'm like, that's going to be me. I want everybody to know that that's where that's what we can live into. Yeah. And so that's what I just start going, oh my goodness.
Oh, I love it. I love everything. I've been out on courses and I've been passed by people who are much, 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 much older than I am. And I just look at them and sometimes I go, how? And then second, I go, that's going to be me one day. I'm going to be that person that is still out here, just trudging along, doing really well, looking stronger than I do right now. That's going to be me. I'm going to do it. I digress a little bit there, but I wanted to ask, one of the things that I've seen so often in athletes who are women who are in their 40s, 50s, and they'll say, or beyond, and they'll say, well, I could never do that. I could never take up sport, or sport's not for me anymore. Mm-hmm. What would you say to them as far as, or what can we maybe shift the perspective a little bit? How can we shift the perspective as far as why sport can be so important for women throughout all life stages?
Yeah. Also, brilliant question. This is what I think. I've really grappled a lot with this idea. So with inherent to sport, when we say sport, inherent to it is we think of competition, or we think of towing the line, or we think of one against another, or whatever the sport might be. And doing your best, the training philosophy, all of these pieces. And so when we think of that, we think, okay, performance. Right? We're out there to perform, or training to perform, have a certain outcome that allows us, to show what we've been working hard within. Yeah. And what I have discovered is the outcome is just that. It's just an outcome. It's a point in time. Yeah. And it's simply a result that means it's so insular. It's such a specific piece, and it's very contained. And yet we, as athletes, we've had this mindset that it's about that piece. It's always seeking to get there, top of the podium, to the right match, to that really finite way, this finite occasion. And what I have discovered is that when we focus on that, we miss a massive opportunity to perform in terms of it being a verb. Yeah. And this is where it's accessible to everyone. Mm-hmm. This idea of to perform is an opportunity to be in process of. Whether you desire to get to a start line, or whether you desire, and I'm being of a race, for example, or whether you desire to climb a mountain with your friends, or go for a 3-day hike, or whatever that might be, that's wonderful. We love those North Stars. But where it really comes into action for every single person in any field of your study and way of being is the process which we're in. And what's brilliant is that sports, it gives us a way of seeing the world, right? Yeah. So it gives us a way of understanding, the peaks and the valleys. I'm in the journey. And yet we sometimes get so caught up and fixated on comparing to who we used to be on the podium, comparing to what we used to do in the race. And it's all about that point again. And we've forgotten to say, but I'm in a process. And where I go from point A to D, it's about point A to D. It's in all of the pieces. It's in the whole every single day. Yeah. It's in the present that's the only thing that matters. And so part of your question was why do we want sport? Why do we want to keep going? It's because this is where we get to be in movement. Yep. It's not about the race. The race is awesome because it gives us a focused desire to get somewhere. And sometimes those things really help, but it's not about the race. It's always about how am I moving my body? How am I feeling strong? How am I being compassionate? How am I, in action? Because there's two things that matter. It's the actions that we take and the mindset that we have. Yeah. The rest of it, the rest of it are they're levers. They're things that we can add. And rest of it, it's all the details. Yeah. So focus on the actions, and we all love movement. Well, I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast that you love movement.
Because otherwise you wouldn't be listening.
So coming always into how am I moving is where that's the process.
Yeah.
That's performance. That's to perform.
I like that. I like that different perspective on it, because I think even for, not everybody's going to be able to perform at the level that is that podium, achieving a podium or that peak performance that's there. It's one of the reasons why I think it's so important just to kind of take a step back and just think what is I love the way you put it, because it's about performing or just doing whatever it is that you really love to do and figuring out where that new level is, and it might just be for the enjoyment of the sport. And as you mentioned, it might just be because you love to do it and it's how you like to move. You like to run, you like to bike, you like to swim, or you like to strength train, or whatever it is that you like to do. It's just one other method and way to stay doing those things, to continue building muscle, to continue building bone and keeping bone density. It's just fun. It's, it doesn't have to be laden with just like this heaviness of it's not like it once was, or that just seems like if there's somebody on this podcast that's listening that isn't necessarily in triathlon or in sport, but is thinking about, well, I need to do something that I love to do, or something that I think I might like to do. You can absolutely learn and get into triathlon or any sort of movement, any sort of sport at any time. It's just need to figure out what the first steps are. And it doesn't really matter what the long-term outcome might be. It's just, you just take a step, get your toes wet and see what happens.
Yeah. And it really is. I mean, it's funny because we want to make it more complex.
But
our brains almost want to say, this has got to be harder than that. Yeah. And we forget that, the beginning of a run, beginning to train for a run is to walk. Yeah. Right. We can walk. And, when I was, I had delivered my first son, and I had a C-section.
Oh, okay.
And so it's a long haul. It's a really tough way of, being for a while there after you've just gone through 9 months of not being totally, where's my body? Yeah. And, it was walking. It was walking and walking and walking. And, I had this eventually, like the weight that I was carrying, i.e. baby, got heavier and heavier and heavier. And I just kept walking with this baby, kept walking, from the front. And then the baby had to go into the back because it was getting too heavy on the front. And I just kept on walking up my mountain, up by my mountain, up by mountain. And then all of a sudden I did a 10K. It was the best 10K. It was fantastic. But the foundation is walking. The foundation is one step, like you just said. And I want to also bring in something else. In my mind, there is zero difference between an elite athlete performing and anybody else.
Yep.
And I see it with my athletes every single day.
Yes.
And because it's showing up for yourself.
Yes.
And I really want to emphasize, particularly for athletes in perimenopause, showing up doesn't mean always doing the interval, doing we love to think about the push, the hard work, the adrenaline going and pumping. And that's when that's what we honor. We honor these, in our society, we honor the bigness of action, and we don't honor nearly as much the retreat. We don't honor this idea of full cycle is where we're in health, and it's both the push and the pullback. And for those that are performing at the elite level and able to stay consistent there, is the same as those performing at the amateur level, masters level, 60, 70. It's that they've gotten the full circle. Yeah. They've gotten the full cycle of the push and the pull. And that's where it really comes down to is understanding your body to know that piece. And that's performance. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Is take your first step, but also know how to take a pause.
Yeah.
And exhale.
Oh, it's so important. I see people, not just athletes, but I see people that push it to the limit for so long, or not even sometimes for so long, but they push it to the limit because it does seem like that's something that is glorified in a sense, is that everything has to be intense or everything has to be a certain way. And you just are laying stress upon stress upon stress. And as your system is changing, as hormones are changing, as your body is trying to adjust to a new stage, we also have to keep in mind that training is a stressor. And so if you just layer stress and like this heavy intensity on top of an already just changing and sort of stressed body, in a sense, you can end up with a system that's like, I need more support than what I'm getting. And that is something that I think is such it would be great for everybody to know, that even just going out for a walk or a gentle run is still going to be very effective. And it's not always about just consistently trying to drive your system into the ground. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of I guess, wisdom and knowledge to be learned from really listening to where your body's at through the process and allowing it to be your guide as far as what it's ready for, and maybe when you need to take some rest or just take it easy for the day. And I think that's one thing I've seen often, that as we go through those shifts and changes, it's a little bit harder to figure out what exactly we need to be doing that's also really good for us, that's different than what we used to do in the past.
Mm-hmm. There's two thoughts that pop into my head. One is that when we think of the walk or the recovery spin or the whatever it is that we're doing, that is the training.
Yeah, exactly.
And
yep,
I almost want to try to reframe this. And I'm just like, I'm saying this just as I think. It's like, we want to separate out training and recovery. We think, okay, this is our training and this is our recovery. But the training encapsulates the rest.
Exactly.
And so maybe what we need to do is we need to have training which encapsulates the rest. And then recovery can be the notion of recovery is of when our body actually is in sleep, or the recovery of a different sort. And maybe we need to tease those out so that we know and we can change our mindset around what training actually requires. Mm-hmm. For us to be consistent. And that training, and we're talking about, the rest or the rest cycle, but it also includes mobility. Yep. It includes, if needed, the passive stretching, if, separated from your training. Yep. It requires, there's all these other components that are part of our training. And if we actually started thinking I'm still in training, then we can honor that space. And there was one other thing that you mentioned that it brought up, is that your body is the story. I've said this before in some different forms. It's your body holds the story of your actions.
Yes.
And you were talking about stress upon stress upon stress. And then where do we end up? Mm-hmm. We end up with professionals like you trying to solve problems that were just like, I don't know what happened. I got injured and I was just running one day and then I just tweaked something. And then, and then or my hormones are going wild. I have hypothyroidism or my blood work is off or whatever it is we're going to our healthcare providers for. Yep. And it's like, that is the story. That is the story. Mm-hmm. And where we want to come is where is it broken? Where is the cycles that we're in broken? Because there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with your body. Your body is doing exactly what it needs to do. It's basically saying to you, wake up. There's something wrong here, because I like to be in movement. Mm-hmm. I like to have energy. That's what your body is fighting for. So if we break down, feel really challenged. It's that we need to come and, again, discombobulate, like use the opportunity of perimenopause to take a look at everything and come into a different reality of like, how can I fix this cycle of being so that I can keep going? Because at the end of the day, from what I know of the athletes in the beyond, is I see that this story shifts to, I want to get to the top of the podium, to I want to keep going, like just like how you mentioned on the course and being passed by people that are much older than you. And they're just, it's not about that finish line. It's like, I'm just going to keep going. Yeah. I'm just like, I'm not going to stop. And that's a really targeted approach. Yeah. Right. That takes a lot of discipline and targeted approach to be able to stay consistent.
Yes.
Something different.
Yeah, that's true. It's also very freeing though, the idea that you don't necessarily have to be trying to accomplish anything super crazy. It's just what do you want to do and how do you want to do it? There's something very, very freeing about that, just take the pressure off of it. And it's just, what would you like to do?
We're so privileged, right? That we can even ask these questions of what is this? Do you want, right? We're so privileged to be able to ask these questions and be in that mind state. Yeah. Of how can I best nourish? How can I best support my body?
Yeah. Yeah. We'll be right back after this short break. I would love to transition a little bit because I loved that mindset shift so much. I think that that's something that we all continue to learn as we go through life, is how do we look at this a little bit differently? And it's always it always starts with the mindset, right? We have to start there first before we go anywhere else. It's very, very common for us to want to go into the change, into what do I need to do? How do I need to do it? What are all the things that I need to add or, do with my schedule? Add to my day, add to my plate. But if we take a step back and think, well, wait a second, like what habits do I need to make in order to make this consistent? What sort of mindset, what sort of thoughts, what sort of beliefs are potentially holding me back? What are some of the things that I need to, basically make that shift around that will help me to be successful before I even make some of those changes? Now, though, what I would love to talk about is what are some of the training, nutrition, recovery aspects in perimenopause and beyond that need to shift when we get into those phases.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. I love. So let's get into some meat here, as yes, some would say. So let's start with the number one thing. And this is going to sound from somebody that, makes a living with, getting people moving. Yeah. The first thing, if you are not sleeping.
Oh, yes.
If you're not sleeping, then we really need to dial that in. We need to figure out how to bring up your sleep to a minimum of 7 hours. And if you're not doing that, then the rest of it is for naught. Yeah. Period. Yep. Everything is from the foundation of your sleep. So now that we've got sleep, now this in perimenopause is like, then you're going to hear some women say, yeah, thanks for that. And I'm being woken up at 3 a.m. every morning, or I'm waking up with hot flashes. Right. Those things are really real. And there's a number of, techniques that can be looked upon to try to help sort some of the sleep difficulties out. So, there's the cool room, like all those things, and making sure it's dark, and, the timing of how are you setting up your sleep schedule becomes incredibly important. And that actually starts at the beginning of your day, not right before you go to sleep. Sleep hygiene. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like cueing coming, one of the most foundational things of learning is where you are in cycles. There's cycles to everything. We've talked a lot about cycling through. Well, your whole rhythm of your body is based on a circadian rhythm. Yes. Morning, night, morning, night, right? And it's not exactly 24 hours. So your sleep is dependent on the morning light. So trying to, if you live like where I do, it's really dark in the morning. So, even thinking about if you're really struggling, then coming into a place of how can I get these light, the light thingamajiggers with my technical term, to start changing the pattern of my actual sleep cycle. So that's number one. Once we've got that, and then the second, and while you're doing that, of course, we can keep moving, but that is where everything restores and your hormones will be restored and working optimally. So let's start there. Now let's get into some fun stuff. Let's get into the actions we can take in mobility. So let's go into training. What we know is that when estrogen starts to decline and is then at a flatlined, everything is about trying to maintain or build, if that is something that's important to you, your muscle mass, bone density, maintaining your bone density. And this is why, thinking about this way beyond before perimenopause has become so important, because how you go into perimenopause is going to really influence how you go through perimenopause.
Yes. Please hear that. Like if there's anybody listening to this that is in their 20s or even in their teens, like please hear that, because you can set yourself up for success throughout the rest of your life by doing some very specific things like weightlifting and training and strength training and building in your 20s.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's so hard. Yes. Like it's such an interesting thing because, I am a mom. I was a geriatric, pregnant woman.
Oh, okay.
Totally geriatric because I'm over 40.
Yeah.
And I have a 2-year-old and 4-year-old. And I can see the challenge when you're in your 30s. Most people if you're going to have children, if that's important to you, that often happens when you're in your 30s.
Yeah. Now.
Busy days, busy times, struggle to try to make it a priority.
Yeah.
But this is, again, we want to try, like really shift our way of being. And let me tell you, it is a challenge in shifting our way of being in our minds to release the control. Like this is just me speaking. I have to release control in order to get onto that bike all the time. Yeah. I'm not going to be there for my children for these, hour and a half that mommy is going to do her training. Oh my goodness. We have to constant release it and be like, they're in the loving care of their other provider. In this case, it's my husband. They're okay. That we have to really shift. So making a point of knowing that you are able to do this at every stage of life. We don't have to give up in our 20s or in our 30s or in our 40s because it'll enable us to keep going for them in our 50s and in our 60s. Yeah. I have a phenomenal role model in my own mother and, who, bless her heart, she's heard it enough from me, like, get your heart rate up, mom. Like she goes off on her bike every day, You're this woman in her 70s now, and she's going up the mountains and getting her heart rate up, trying to maintain that muscle mass. And why? Because she was working so hard earlier to do it. So, yes, you mentioned a couple things. We want to maintain strength and bones, etc. If we start earlier, that's better. Yeah. But it's never too late.
It's never too late. Yes, that's what I was going to say. It's never too late.
Never too late. And this is what's so exciting about what I get to do with athletes is that I get to support them to believe in themselves and in their bodies in a different way. So we come into, let's just use the bike as an example, because I, see this, when I teach the spin sessions. They get on the bike in the very beginning, when they first start working with me, it's like, what are you doing? Like, I don't even know how, like, that is way too hard for me. And I'm like, yeah, that's your heart rate getting up. This is what is performance. This is you performing. And yeah, it's hard. And you know what? You didn't fall apart. because we're smart about it, right? You do things progressively, but you didn't fall apart. And so now when athletes come to me, it's all of a sudden, it's like, I'm not exhausted all the time when I'm trying to do hard things.
Yeah.
Because that's really part of it. Because we've taken care of sleep. We're always bringing in recovery, or the rest cycle. So now they're starting to understand I can do hard things.
So good.
I'm not going to fall apart if my heart rate's really high. I'm not going to fall apart if I'm learning to lift progressively, progressive being a very important word, more weight. And what I used to do, this is what's so cool, is like here, I work with 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, like I don't have any 70-year-olds right now, but in the 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And they are coming in, getting stronger, adding on
so good,
like power. Now, when you get told, oh man, you just got another 5 watts, you got another 10 watts. And this is, thinking about a power meter on a bike.
Yep.
You got that. Well, what does that do for you? It means that, this is process. This is me in performance. This is me this is working.
Yep.
And one of the things I always hear is, I was like, Tenille, I need to do more. I'm like, no, you need to keep performing. I don't need you to do more. I don't need you to be running all the time. I want you to go and get connected to what other priorities you have in your life. There's time. And this is going to be a slow process. We have patience in this process, but the process works. So it's about constantly knowing that you can meet different challenges. And so we talk about strength training. We talk about doing high intensity. I want you to hit high intensities that you didn't know you could do before. Yeah. Because you have the confidence and you're not working suboptimally, which is what I see so many female athletes doing. So many suboptimal performance. Why? Because they're always fatigued, because it's the stress upon stress and upon stress. Yes. And I don't want suboptimal. It's not good enough for me. I don't want, I want to see gains. And for some athletes in the beyond part in particular, because things start shifting, it's not always about getting 5 more watts. For many athletes, it's not always about lifting more. It's not about getting faster. It might be about maintaining. But the other piece of it is also coming into, I'm still moving. I'm still running after my grandchildren. And there's a shift in performance there. It's like, how many other 75-year-old females do I see pick up their grandson and put them on their shoulders? That's pretty cool. Yeah. That's what I want you to know, that you can do that you can still lift that heavy suitcase and put it over your head, that you can still carry both hands, a farmer's walk of groceries. Yes. And that you're doing it. So our idea of performance may shift, but you are still in action. You are still performing. If you're doing that into your 70s, into your 80s, hallelujah, let's celebrate. And so it's a shift in like coming into performance of, I'm getting 5 more watts, to, no, I've got this. This is my strength training right now, walking from the grocery store to my car, which I parked a little further away because I'm going to do the farmer's walk with my both load of groceries into my recycling bag, going forward and whatever it might be, right? Like, yes. And then going, I still got it. Or picking up and we look at, okay, I'll be quiet in a second. You're good. When we think about, one of the biggest indicators of health is being able to get up from the floor. Yes. Like, oh, I know. Right? Mm-hmm. Yep. Are you able to get down onto the floor and get up? Yeah. And, this is a sports podcast. So it is. The listeners are not trying to get up off the floor. But I want you to also, I just want to say, this is not a normal population. So being in this podcast, listening and being a listener, you're not normal, and it's beautiful. you're actually really in action, and it's awesome. And keep with it.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was the training. Just like, I'll keep going.
No, that's perfect. I loved everything that you mentioned there. I think the only thing I wanted to highlight, which is mostly because it's my passion, which is just that I think that, I see a lot of people in that fit but fatigued place. And it's so hard because it doesn't matter how much you layer on top of that. Like you will not perform at your absolute best when you are fatigued. And that, like, I think it encompasses a lot there, right? Like fatigued, tired, but there's also symptoms. There's imbalances with your hormones. There's not sleeping well. There's stress upon stress. There's so many different aspects to a fit and fatigued athlete where, you just like it's so much more fun, I'd say, to just be able to perform at your absolute best because your body is humming, because it feels good, because it has everything that it needs in order to do its job. And I would love to just kind of drive that home a little bit more, just because I think there are so many people, women and men, that are kind of living in this kind of fit and fatigued state where, you're super fit. I know. But at the same time, all of that time and training that you're putting in could actually be quite a bit better, could be quite a bit more. There could be more that you could achieve, maybe just for the sake of achieving it, but also because, I mean, if you're in this group, as you mentioned, like you're in it for a reason. So we have a special goal in mind usually. And I think as people working with athletes in general, we want to see you achieve those goals and those dreams that you have. So however we can help you do that the most effectively and efficiently, well, we're going to try to do it.
Absolutely.
Moving on though, I know I'm going to get asked questions about, well, what do I need to change and shift as far as nutrition goes? Because I'm kind of always on that side of things. So let's dive into that really quickly before we wrap this up. But what are some of the things about nutrition that need to change as we go through that shift as well?
The first thing is that we need adequate nutrition. We have been, particularly right now with the age group, like if you're in perimenopause right now, or if you're in the beyond, we've all gone through the low fat craze. We all went through the no carbohydrates. We all, like, carbs are bad. People don't even know what carbs are anymore. And what that has led us to is a real, like, suboptimal way of eating and being. And I have every single one of my athletes, when they start training with me, we all have to do a 4-day food log.
Yes.
Simply, I don't care about numbers, to be really honest with you, but I want to make sure that you are aware of how those numbers are showing up for you, to say, this is your baseline, this is your minimum. And I would say 95% of the time, we're below the minimum.
Yes.
We're not eating enough.
Yes.
And so that's the number one thing. The number two thing I would say, I can say, make sure you're getting enough protein, thinking about, because that's going to help our muscle mass. We're working really hard in our training. We're, lifting heavy. We're doing the intensity. We're, continuing to do our zone 2 aerobic work for our cellular health. We've got all those things. And what's going to help us build repair is the enough carbohydrates, protein, and fat. We can't get away from all three. We need all three. We need fat. We need the protein. We need the carbohydrates. So how do we do this? We eat real food. Eat real food. And by that, again, we're coming into some pretty simplistic messages. Is where is it? Where are you breaking down? Where is it? And I don't mean by breaking down in terms of, oops, I slipped, I ate a bag of chips. That's not I'm talking. That, to me, I'm like, eat the bag of chips and enjoy it. Where are we? Don't worry about the bag of chips.
Please, it's
Let's
fine.
make sure that let's see the big picture. Is where is it? Because again, I live in this privileged world where I'm talking to people that are listening to this podcast, listening to the things that I do as well, wanting to be healthful. We're a very special group of people. I want to say, when you're not being healthful, then you're telling yourself, oh, I slipped up again. I'm not enough again. I'm not doing the right things again. But I want you to go beyond that. I want you to think about, what is it that's causing the breakdown in the cycle of fueling for your workouts? So doing the pre, doing the during, and during the after. It's not about, I'm pretty sure that if you're here, you want to be healthy. You're trying to make good choices. And it's not about the choices. It's about, where are we breaking down in our rhythm of our day? Where are we breaking down in prioritizing our nutrition, or how we're fueling or nourishing our body? Where is those breakdowns? I want to address those, because I'm pretty sure that there's so much information out there. There's educators like yourself that are supporting and saying, okay, these are carbohydrates. This is what the protein contents look at. These are the bioavailability of proteins. Like, those are just details.
Yep.
You can follow a recipe. I know that most of my athletes can follow the recipe.
Yep.
But where we fall down is not in the recipe. It's in the, I was running late again and I just had to grab something. Mm-hmm. It was the,
yep.
This is totally me too. I wanted the meal to look a certain way, and therefore I had to do it. But because I didn't have time, I didn't do it at all. And then we had to get, I ran out of time. But when we we can relinquish some of that control? Is that possible? Maybe the meal won't look perfect, but it'll be real food. It might not be exactly how you want it. And I'm just talking from I love the way I cook. I love the way I cook. And so when my husband cooks, it's delicious, but it's certainly not the way I cook.
Yep.
And so am I able to, maybe not every day, am I able to allow this other way of being? Mm-hmm. And if there's no space for that, then we have to look at, our life and then make some tough choices. So it's a bit of it's not specific on nutrition, but it absolutely is about nutrition, because I think in so many cases we have the right recipes, mm-hmm. and where we fall down is in the space that we create, or in we run. Oh, I forgot. I missed lunch again.
Yep.
I don't have time at breakfast. The kids are doing this.
Yeah, it was chaos this morning. So I was finishing up the rest of a quarter of a breakfast burrito, trying to get the kids out the door. Mm-hmm.
That's life.
Yeah.
That's the normal.
Yes.
The chaos is the normal. If you I don't know, I have a 2 and a 4-year-old, so I get this. So when it is smooth, when it is all smooth, that is not normal.
Right.
But yet we plan our life like it's smooth. Yes. How is that going to work?
Yeah.
I don't remember a single week in the past, I could say how long, in which I had a normal week of my kids were both at school every single day. Everything has happened. I didn't get called out. Everything at my husband's work is good. Everything, nothing. Every single week, I tell you, I'm just oh my goodness, how did that happen? That's normal.
Yeah.
And how we roll. Right. And that's the same thing for nutrition, is how can we change our pattern of thinking so we can nourish our body with real food? Because at the end of the day, that's what our body knows how to deal. Our body gets what we need if we're eating the real food.
Absolutely. Yes. And enough of it. I think that's a really, really critical piece there too. Yes. So just a part of that fit and fatigued, and kind of to bring, this all home is that part of that fit and fatigued is a bit of not eating enough and the body not getting enough of what it needs. Just as you mentioned, protein, carbs, fats, and then all of your vitamins, minerals, and all of those bits and pieces. And I say this a lot on this podcast, eat the rainbow of different kinds of foods and get as good a quality as you can when you can. If you can do that and just eat somewhat balanced, it doesn't, as you mentioned, bag of chips or the pizza on the weekend or the, whatever you want to put in as those things, like they're not going to matter as much if for the most part you're focusing on a wide variety of different colorful fruits and vegetables, really good quality protein when you could get it. You can also get protein through plant-based sources as well, but a mix of all of it is ideal. You get the fat, you get carbohydrates from your starchy carbohydrates, and some of your vegetables will have some of those as well. And like, it's that balance there and just getting enough of it, which is really where it can be a lot. And sometimes that's in the craziness of life. Sometimes that's just having a few things prepped. Sometimes that's having a protein powder around in case things kind of go awry. I mean, it's just absolutely, it's just kind of a little bit of prep and thought when life is a bit more chaotic, because we all go through those stages for sure. As you mentioned, like I don't have kids yet, but at the same time, like we still have, I have my own version of chaos around here. So,
everybody does.
I mean, it doesn't matter what stage of life you're in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I remember when I didn't have kids, it was busy. I don't know what I was doing.
Yes.
It's a different busy. That's all that's shifted.
I know.
And when you get, and through perimenopause to beyond, it's still busy. Mm-hmm. Even if your kids have left home, it's still busy. It's still going to be, things are never going to go quite as normal. I think you're right. Absolutely. Rainbow. And, I think particularly for perimenopause, the other thing I want to say through this time is because their hormones are on such a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Things will, your ability to tolerate certain foods, ability to tolerate fructose, for example.
It changes.
And it will change again. So whatever is happening now isn't a forever. It's part of the shift. So what you may be able to tolerate, what you used to love those, you would just pop a date with an almond in the middle or something. And now what in the world is going on with these dates? Like I can't eat dates anymore. Yeah. And, it was a go-to for pre-fueling or something like that. That will shift again. You might be able to eat dates again when, post-menopause, but be aware and come back into the idea that your body is the story. Your body's always telling you when something's up. Mm-hmm. And whether it be by gut distress or whether it be by something breaking down, whether it be a lack of sleep or there's so many ways that our body is signaling, you know what, that's just not working for me.
Yeah.
And trying to come into awareness of those things, it's tough. It takes consciousness. It takes space.
Yes.
That's the thing. It takes space to actually come into that. And we have so many pieces in the world that are taking up space. It's like you just look at your Facebook feeds.
I know.
That's taking up space to actually notice and come in. So becoming conscious of the space you're creating to have awareness of your body is really important and how it's going to change for your nutritional needs.
Yeah.
And your body's the story.
I was going to say too, not attaching a meaning or an emotion necessarily to it either. Like, I think I get this a lot too, which is, I'll never be able to eat that again. Or, this is just so hard. Or this is, there's so much more meaning instead of oh, shoot. Okay. Dates aren't really working for me. I guess we'll, make a shift and we'll see, what can I try? What's something different that I can, make that change? Do you see that?
Well, I would say if you are feeling emotions are emotions, you're going to have them no matter what. Right.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting and this is really hard, I want you to go right there. That's just how I'd be like, it is hard. That's right. You're going through another change. Darn it. There's another thing that your body is going, don't want to deal with that right now. And to give compassion and to be like, yeah, it is hard. Perimenopause is hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not easy to figure this out. It's not easy to be healthful all the time. It's not easy to make space.
Yeah.
And here you are. And you're conscious of it. And it's okay. And it's hard. And there, you also will know, and this is where like the body has a knowing and you have a knowing. You'll find the answer to move from here and trust that you have something that you can shift to, because you know how to create possibility, because athletes do that. Athletes know how to climb mountains. We're good at it. We're good at working hard. So trust that you're going to figure it out. But if you need to take a moment just to be like, this sucks.
Yeah.
You take it. And then move through that cycle. It's called the stress cycle. Let's move through that stress cycle, and we'll come over.
That's good.
We'll come over and come through it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanted to cover today that we didn't?
No, I think that I'm just so thankful that you've asked me to come on. I just love sharing this, and I encourage people to come and find me. Join the Athletes Thriving in Perimenopause and Beyond Facebook group. Mm-hmm. And
I'm in there, so come join me.
Yeah, join, say something, say hello. There's always something new, and questions I'm pondering, or things that I'm looking to share, or experiences others are having in relation to that. And that you keep finding and seeking out those that to be connected to. I think that's the thing I would want to leave any listeners with, is stay connected to each other and stay connected to those that are lifting you up, because that's where we want to go.
Is that where they can find you too? Is in that Facebook group? Is that the best place? That's
where I'm most active. I'm not a very good Instagrammer, because I figure I can handle one thing, and that's my Facebook group, and it's also where I really love to connect with people. Sure. So that's really where I am found. You can also follow through the newsletter. I'll always make sure that I'm always up to something, and so we're coming up with a new series really soon, in which you're going to be part of, and so that'll be launched, eventually in May. And so, get connected so that you can find out more of from experts across mindset, nutrition, training, and recovery. And we can, talk more about it.
Love it. Okay. Well, that's our episode for now. Thank you, Tenille, for being with us. It was just such an honor to have you on the show. This was incredible. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow Wisp Sports on all social media channels, and also make sure to share this episode with anyone you think may love it. You can also follow me at Dr. Kirstin on Facebook and Instagram, and drkirstin.com. If you'd like to reach us with any comments or questions about this episode, you can email us at info@wispsports.com, and you can always leave a direct message with us over on social media as well. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back next week. Take care.